Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together.
Hey guys, what's up? Amir Reiter here with another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast, going live with my guest, Ken Lundin. Ken, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Could be, because any better, I'd be guilty.
That's a good answer. I like that. And always positive. You bring the best energy, man. I loved our conversation the first time we met. And I'm excited to have this podcast and to share it with buyers of sales services, sellers of sales services, everybody who listens to this podcast with the goal of learning. You've been the president at RevHeat for quite some time. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the lovely business of sales agency work in the first place. What brought you here?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think most of the time, just like those who go into sales, you stumble into it. So,
a wrong turn or like a stumble?
Say it again.
Was it like a wrong turn or is it like a stumble into sales?
No, it was. So I had run two companies prior to deciding to launch RevHeat about 7 years ago. Doubled them in revenue, did the thing, and still ended up getting fired from the last one. So I spent the next week and a half traveling the United States, going to Chicago and Dallas and interviewing with private equity and corporate headhunters and all the silliness. And two things go on. One was I found that there was an underappreciation for the client, the customer at the corporate level. And if you're going to run a sales team, last thing you want is an executive suite that doesn't actually like their customers.
Yeah.
And the second thing that we thought about as I went through that, I was like, why pigeonhole myself where we can actually take the practices and the things that we've used to be successful, to be part of the management team on the Inc. 5000 and the Inc. 500 for 4 years in a row, take those techniques and move them outside and help lots of companies. And so we did that back in, I think, about 2016 or so.
You know what stood out to me that you threw in really fast, as if no one who's listening, you quickly said, I got fired, right? I got fired too from NetSuite, and that's how I started CloudTask. So I'm laughing when I heard it because I think a lot of people are afraid to tell the truth. And typically a lot of times it's us getting fired or something, an event that gets us to stand up a lot stronger and taller. So a lot of times people don't talk about that, but you threw it in there and I heard it.
Well, I think look at LinkedIn, right? If we were all, the truth is, if everybody was as good as their LinkedIn profile, nobody would have ever failed.
Well, they wouldn't be on LinkedIn. They would be in Bali relaxing probably, right? Or tired by now.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's just silly.
So that's actually part of the show, right? I think we like to be super transparent. I think a lot of times our buyers are first times buyers of sales agency services, or they've done it before and they weren't successful. And I think oftentimes people aren't talking about the mistakes buyers make. And we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about RevHeat. Tell us about what you guys do, overall, general. Give me the elevator pitch. And then I want to dive into your ICP.
Yeah, perfect. I guess the easiest way to say this, what we do is we have a process that we've baked in called the Sales Alpha Roadmap, proprietary process where we convert underperforming sales teams into forecast beating quota giants. And so we do that throughout a process that we use, and it involves a holistic look at a sales organization. So our skill sets are everything from on the sales consulting side, creating sales processes, roles and responsibilities, and all the structural stuff that you need, like systems, processes, infrastructure. And then in addition to that, we're able to couple that with the tactical things that we do, which is, B2B sales training. So we just firmly believe that, I don't know, let's just say it, the sales training and consulting industry is freaking broken. We sell stuff in a manner that we never get anyone to sell, and we sell hacks. Say it again.
So you said it, not me.
Yeah, I mean, we sell hacks. We sell, hey, I'll teach your crew to be a better closer. But the Effingham forgetting curve says that, 6 days after that training, they'll have forgotten 77% of it. So that's why we've changed. We do micro learning over the course of a year because we're more worried about impact and outcomes than we are in getting through a day. So, I've created a model around the whole idea that you got to take a holistic look, because you can have the greatest sales team in the world, but the systems and processes are broke. There's going to be a massive amount of friction that's not going to allow you to be successful.
Yeah, and I think one thing that stood out to me when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you'd be doing malpractice if you gave out a recommendation without a full diagnosis, which I think is part of what is broken in the industry. which we're not gonna get too deep into it. That's gonna be another call, but I did appreciate what you said that, because I have similar feelings to you. When it comes to your agency, are you focusing on more bottom of the funnel or top of the funnel, or are you guys looking at bottom of the funnel and top of the funnel just as revenue in one department? Is one more sought after as the other, or is it both?
If you're talking about from the people who partake in our services, so to speak,
Yes.
I can tell you this, that we have, whether it's us or it's a slate of the experts that we have within our system, we go top to bottom. Where we really, really absolutely 100% crush it is kind of that, how do we take people from being transactional and ordinary sellers into consultative based sellers that are actually able to increase your margins, increase your average deal size, and shorten your sales cycle times. So we really absolutely just have a really, really tight area there that we can absolutely crush it in. Then we've got, people that work with us and experts within our field that, we can help SDRs and BDRs. So it's a pretty full slate approach, because quite frankly, sales organizations these days are multi-leveled. Mm-hmm. So I think you need to understand what's happening. So we diagnose it first.
You can have both. You can be stronger than another. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, you can ask for more meetings, or you can take your conversion rate from 5% to 15%, and now you 3x meetings, right? So there's two sides of the output that people don't talk about, right? And I think always the heat is on more meetings, which I think is dying and going away. I think engagement's really bad. I personally do digital demand gen, and when I do lead gen forms on LinkedIn, the number of lead gen forms is dying. And I saw this on a news article today that people are more likely, they don't want news articles anymore. They want lead gen, right? They don't want to fill out forms, right? So at the same time, I think buyers are definitely, I think the focus on meetings will wind down, and I think that we'll finally have a spotlight on actual account executives and their conversion rates. So I like where you're focused on, because I think the light is on that area. Any technologies you guys like to coach? Is it you've gone a course, or is it more about the systems? And do you guys focus more on the people, tech, and process, or is it one or the other, or is it all three when you make recommendations?
It's all three. We're not, I would say as an example, we're not a Salesforce.com expert, integrator, whatever, although we have resources that can do it for us. But we do look at, how's your tech stack working with your people, et cetera. And we're also always looking at the newer stuff. I'm probably in Chat GPT now. I bet you it saves me about 4 hours a week based on using it for ideation, ICT, that kind of stuff, huh?
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
4 hours a week is, I can't do math, but 212 something hours is a big deal.
It's a lot of time. We could never do the things that we do. I could never do the additional content creation stuff that I need to do if it wasn't for having something like that. And so we run courses on how to teach, how do we teach sellers and sales managers about certain concepts? How do we teach sellers to go to ideal client profile research? How do we teach them to do research about what those problems and challenges are that they're looking for? And it's so much easier than going to Google and getting a list of 270 sites that you have to sort through to figure out which one might actually make sense for you.
It's doing that sorting for you, which is I think it's going to let the people that push above and beyond kind of go here, and people that complain are going to kind of stay down here, which might be better for hiring companies, because now maybe by the time someone's an account executive and they're ready to be coached, they're actually using the modern tools. I think that's going to start separating people. But back to your agency. Talk to me about your best buyers. Do they tend to be software companies or service companies, or both? Do you like one better than the other?
I would say they tend to be both, but here's where it changes. It's only B2B. So if you have a B2B or B2C software company, that's not our wheelhouse.
Big hike.
But if you're a B2B seller selling enterprise, so we've done business with companies who have sold to contractors and companies who have sold to kind of small business. We've done some over the years, but I would tell you that's not the ideal fit. Like where we really crush it is when you're talking about, I have to get a complex buying process through, and it may not be super complex, but it's something that takes 90 to 180 days. And it's something where that you're going to get a champion, a buyer, and you're going to have a number of people involved. I mean, Gartner says there's 11 people involved in every buying decision today.
Yeah, I saw that.
So those are the types of environments that we really function well in.
What do you define as you said the word enterprise. Do you define enterprise by complexity or by value or sometimes both? Can a enterprise
Yeah, sometimes
okay.
For purposes of this, I probably have to say both. For purposes of when we talk to people, it's more about the complexity, the idea, the value base, how much consulting has to be done. Are you doing a 2-call close, or are you doing something that's going to take 5 to 20 calls? So we're only talking about that. Usually when we're saying who you're selling to, though, that usually happens somewhere above the $500 million level. So if your customer base is above 500 million, it could be smaller, but if it's above 500 million, that's the perspective where you're getting into these complex enterprise sales, because you'll have multiple buyers involved in the process.
And this is also where the area that improving something from a 5% to a 7% close rate could equate in millions of cash flow and valuation, right? So I think it makes sense why you focus on that ICP. It's where you have the biggest business impact, right? And ironically, those companies have to have a huge business impact too to sell as well, right? If it makes sense. So it's like both your account executives at that level have to understand how of an impact their product has, and then the companies that are looking to hire an expert like you and RevHeat have to understand that it's, if you want to have an high impact selling, right, you have to kind of have it the same thing with training, right? That makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's all that matters. We wanted it to make sense to you. No, I'm just teasing. We think about it, and it's, let's just call it what it is. I mean, most companies, if you really talk to a CRO, a CEO, a VP, they want their sales team to be performing better. They just don't know where to start. And so they struggle with those components. And it's things like what you said, like we can put a finer point on. Let's say that you're converting, 25% of your first calls into opportunities. Well, the best teams in the world convert 50 to 60%. So what does that mean? That's a double in potential opportunities. That's a double in potential revenue if you hold closing rates. So yeah, there's absolutely a way to look at this where you can say, do I want to make money today versus long-term? And like with our model from, audit to accelerate to advance, the accelerate component is let's get quick wins because we need to move the needle. And then the advanced is let's compound all of the wins we're getting. So long-term, easier for you to grow your business.
So software enterprise, consultative sales process, longer than 90 days, right? Lots of moving parts. These are the sales process where you got 11 or more buyers involved in the process, as Gartner cites. What would you say from a region standpoint? Are you mainly focused in the United States, or do you guys have a presence in APAC, or is it mainly US customers? What's your best region?
Yeah, I'd say most of what we do is North America. We have companies that have divisions in New Zealand and Singapore. So I would, if you were to say Ken in 2023, yeah, it's Canada, the United States mostly. Cool. If you were to say, Ken, what is 2024 going to look like? We're already talking to consultants throughout the world to branch and become a global entity.
Awesome. Like we're in Colombia, so you're already getting your reach out there. What separates you? What separates your agency from other agencies? Like, is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah, you started to allude to it based on our last conversation. It's one of the things that I was fighting with for years, and we used to make good money just selling sales consulting and training the old way. But as we said, we talked about last time, and you mentioned this time, to actually prescribe a fix, like in medicine, to prescribe a medicine without actually doing a diagnosis is considered malpractice. Yet in our industry, when we're talking about the life of a business, they do it all the time. So we have a process that's called the sales roadmap process, which begins with that audit. So we know exactly what we need to fix. But it's a scientifically based process because we had 2.5 million people that we're basing this on. We have 33,000 companies, 200 plus industries. So the biggest thing that separates us is all that data in order to figure out the best practices for your company and your industry.
You also sell the way you train, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Which is important, right? Because like you said before, other agencies that or try to teach people about this consultative sales process, about really diagnosing people, and they're just saying yes to everything on a sales call. It's kind of hard to. It's like going to a trainer you're in better shape than him, and he's telling you he's going to get you in good shape. I had that happen to me, and I was like, man, add 30 pounds, and you could train me. So that makes a lot of sense. What about mistakes that buyers make? That's kind of what we want to know. We want to know what mistakes do buyers make when not only, not just, I'm not talking about mistakes they make that affect closing rates. I'm talking mistakes that lead them to pick the wrong agency.
Yeah. It's pretty simple, to be honest. There's two primary mistakes that people who come to agencies like us make. One of them is they wait too long, right? The average VP of sales, average CROs in their seat only 18 months. Yet if you talk the average VP of sales or a CRO, they're like, oh, I've got to, get my feet wet, and I got to be here for a year or 15 months before I'll entertain outside counsel. Well, by then you're on the clock. I mean, it's over. So first is you wait too late. And the reason that's a problem is because when you work with the right agency, the time to impact is accelerated by 2, 3, 4 times what you could actually do on your own. Look, we often tell people it's not that we know more than you. We can just execute a hell of a lot faster than you can. And so that's where it comes help. So one, don't wait, right? When you see a sign of trouble, see that. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is because they wait, they tend to come in and go, so how can you fix this in 30 days? Like when we tell them our audit process is 30 days, right? They haven't fixed anything in 18 months. We tell them the audit process is 30 days and they go, oh, that's too long. Let's be honest. If you're turning around a sales team of any size, it's a 6-month to 12-month adventure, and you have to be okay getting into it. And because of you, the leader of the organization doesn't understand that it's going to take 6 to 12 months. You cannot align all the stakeholders in your company to that's what's happening. You'll be put under these artificial timelines and you'll be pushed out. Yeah. We see it happening time and time and again. 85% of CEO or VPs of sales and CROs right now are considering changing a job in the next 12 months if the economy doesn't turn around. There's a massive wave of problems because of this short-sighted approach.
That makes sense. And it's interesting because I think it also trickles down probably to the way they sell, right? When I'm listening to it, it's like the mistakes that they make as buyers typically are probably the same mistakes that their buyers make, and they're not connecting the two together, right? They're probably having this conversation like this guy is waiting to buy our enterprise solution when he's waiting too long, his timelines are off, and then they're also it's like this bad habit, right? That kind of continues, and I see you laugh because you've seen it over and over again, and then I laugh at this too because I remember trying to do outsource sales when we were an agency, and people would say, software leaders would say, we don't outsource, and I looked at them and I was like, SaaS is outsourcing. I was like, you're telling people not to buy developers in house because we built it and you can pay per month. And then they're like, we don't outsource. I'm like, well, if you don't outsource, then you're trying to sell something that you don't even realize outsourcing. It's probably the same thing where they can't even connect the two. I think that 99% of software leaders out there don't understand that SaaS is outsourcing software development. I bet you they don't.
Well, I think what you made this is an incredible point that we can't run by. We have to make sure we sit on it for a second. And that is this: you will buy like you sell, you will sell like you buy. Like that's just a proven thing. We call it the buy cycle. We measure it in our audit, and your sellers will do the same thing. And so this is what's so silly about that. Here's how you can self-identify if you're doing this and you're on the extreme. If you're a company or business listening to this, are you asking your sellers to give quarterly or monthly discounts because your calendar is flipping? Because that's the perfect example of not looking at this holistically and not looking at this like we need our sellers to be more effective. And that's teaching your sellers and your buyers, we're not worth what we asked you for the first time.
It's like the government printing money.
Yeah, it can be, certainly.
It's like they raise interest rates too late, then over tighten, and they're going to print. It's the same thing. It's kind of ironic that we talk about this because a lot of these patterns that we experience in the professional world are carried in the personal world and the world in general. And I think that a lot of people are blind to connecting the dots like you have, right? And it's interesting to talk about. Talk to me about
It's behavior change, right, Amir? It's behavior change, and nobody
Very hard
likes.
to do that.
Why is America 65% obese? Like, get out of the body positive image stuff. That's cool. Like, go ahead. But there isn't anybody in the world who's going to tell you that the bigger your waistline is, the better your health is, and the longer you'll live. But
I've seen pictures in the 1930s in New York City, and you know, it's kind of weird. But then again, sugar is a really powerful lobbying company, right? Yeah. So it's like breaking the rules. It's like, because we can't train new good behaviors, we make those bad behaviors acceptable, and that's not going to lead to a healthy population. It's not going to lead to a healthy society. It's not going to lead to healthy business P&L. Right? It kind of translates.
Yeah, it's totally true. Like here's the deal. If you're a leader in a company and you're not okay with change, how in the heck do you think that your sales team's supposed to be?
That's true. And I'm guilty of some of this, right? Like as a leader of my company, like I'm oftentimes not paying attention in daily stand-ups and meetings. So like I'm aware of the fact that I need to change some of my behaviors. So if anybody's listening, I gotta look in the mirror too sometimes and not expect certain behaviors if I'm not doing it from the top down. But it's kind of interesting we have this conversation because it's really human psychology, right? It all breaks down to human psychology, and that's what sales really is. And it translates into zeros and ones, right? Into a bank account. And it's all connected. We're all doing the same mistakes, right? It's the same way that, like, even our world, right? We have a pollution problem, but we build things to be thrown out versus build things to recycle, right? Had we built things to be recycled, we'd be in a different situation. And it's like a fundamental change where everyone kind of says, well, it's okay because they're passing the buck. But for anybody listening, if you want to stop passing the buck or excuses, I'd reach out to Ken. One more question, Ken, about before I let you go. Talk to me about mistakes buyers make now that they hired you, right? Different mistakes. They have mistakes when they find you. Talk to me about this perfect customer. They're a good timeline. They look great. You're like, this is going to be a happy, satisfied, referring client. And then all of a sudden their behavior just sets an array or a stray. What does that look like?
Yeah, the biggest mistake, it goes back to everything we've talked about today. Like, and I apologize, people. I don't mean to make this so simple that it's complicated, but it is. And that is, what do? The leadership, the sales manager, the sales leader, the CEO, the whoever it is that brings us in doesn't hold the people below them accountable for the changes that need to occur. They don't spend enough time in that because they assume, hey, we're just going to give it to you and you're going to do it. Man, my first business, I was like, I'm going to hire all these people and we're going to take 2 weeks off between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And I'm like, they're all going to want to work for me just because it's going to be awesome. That doesn't work. No. Like, you literally have to show people the guardrails and you got to hold them accountable to it. And so the number one mistake is the lack of rigor around change management. Yeah. Because we can come in and give you the world's best enterprise sales process, which we do. We can come in and give you the world's best hiring process for sales talent, which we do. We can come in and give you some of the world's best sales training, which we do. But if you don't hold people accountable to make the changes to actually implement those techniques, tactics, and strategies, you might as well just light that cash on fire.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think back to diet and personal training, right? I think that discipline is that diet, right? It's like, you can do all the right things, but if you're not reinforcing those behaviors, what are you really expecting, right? At the end of the day, and it's so easy, I think, to blame the other. It's very. I think we live in a society where people rarely look in the mirror, right? They don't say things like we said. I got fired. That's how I got here, right? They're not really looking in the mirror, and they will say things like, "Oh, that agency didn't give me a good experience. They didn't deliver what's promised." They will very rarely say, "We didn't actually follow what they told us and practice it," right?
Yeah.
And I can't solve for that. I'm like, I know that there's straightforward shooters like you and me in this world, and I hope that we don't upset too many people while we actually try to help people, right? By being direct and honest. And the cool part is that we can always say this to each other, right? I think the big thing is that people who are listening here, it's not that Ken has it locked down. Ken is also probably doing the same reps in his own business, right? Like, I'm doing the same things that I preach in our own business, right? People often think that, like, we're selling a service that's different from what's happening internally, right? But it's like, it's not. We are literally listening to our own things and we're executing our things. That's how we get our muscles stronger, right? That's how we become experts at it. It's the book work, but it's also the doing work. And you've been doing this for a while. So I'll leave it at this. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, pick your brain, learn from you, get their meeting to operate up 40%, get their opportunity to close rate up 30% and make some money and stick to your principles, where can they find you and how can they reach you, man?
Yeah, so a couple things. They can always come check me out on LinkedIn. Connect with me personally and tell me that you listened to this conversation with Amir and I, and that qualifies you instantly for a free strategy call with me, not our sales team. So you can always do that, first of all. Second, you can check out our website or email me at ken@revheat.com. And then, of course, you'll see more of us with Amir's fantastic.
I'm going to help you get people's strategy. I want to take you up with that strategy. You're going to give me that strategy, and I'm going to broadcast it so we can just do it out loud. I'm going to ask you. All right, so expect that. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Transform Sales Podcast. Ken, I appreciate you, man, and I look forward to learning from you because I believe that I can learn from you, and I don't know everything. So
yeah. I don't either. You want to know, the number one thing people get from me is that I've made enough failures that I just try to get people to stop repeating my mistakes.
That's what I tell people too. I think that's a certain point where you hit maturity, where you can be real and be like, I lost $10 million doing this. Don't lose more money because I already did it. And that's the real deal, how people learn. So Ken, thank you again for the transparency, the honesty, and keeping it real when other people don't. Have a good day, man. Take care.